I'm Sophie. I'm known as Fashion Belle on all social media platforms. I'm a content creator and I create content around disability. I use an electric wheelchair and I have a condition called Spinal Muscular Atrophy.
You dress quite well for a disabled person. I'm the same. I sit there and go, just give me a nice coffee in a good spot. And I'm set. But then I sit there and go, I don't want to pay all this money and then just sit in the bar.
I can't walk at all, I can't stand. I can still drive a car, I drive that from my wheelchairs. Mummy, why is she in that chair? And my car is like a spaceship to them because it all opens automatically and they're like, I'm like, we'd love to have holidays with you. Please come on holiday with us.
Stood outside the school in January, freezing, being like, Mum, no one's here and it's like 4:15. What's going on? Welcome back to the Not Quite Pod. Today we've got Sophie with us. Sophie, do you just quickly want to introduce yourself and let everyone know a bit about yourself?
Hello, I'm Sophie and I'm known as Fashion Belle on all social media platforms. I'm basically a content creator and I create content around disability. I use an electric wheelchair and I have a condition called Spinal Muscular Atrophy.
Awesome. I'm so looking forward to diving into this because we often catch each other but never actually get to chat because we're normally going somewhere or doing something. So it's going to be nice to actually sit down and have a bit of a chat. But just as a brief introduction into you, talk me through a bit about how you got into content creation.
I basically started because I just didn't see anyone sort of in media, especially when social media got bigger, that kind of represented me. And I was like, why is there no disabled people on these platforms? And I loved fashion. I mean, still do, but fashion was a massive thing for me back in the day. And I just wanted to show my outfits. Like, I was just wanted to see people in wheelchairs in some really nice outfits, not wearing black all the time. So I thought, why the hell not? Might as well do it myself.
I mean, fair enough. I mean, I can't really say much because I am Mr. Dark Colours, but I think that comes from my hair because it's always awkward when you're playing with ginger because some people say ginger and bright colours go together and others go, oh, no, red flag, major red flag. So, I'm Mr. Dark Colours, but I hear you. I think as well, because often, I don't know if you've had the same. I've had people come up to me before and go, you dress quite well for a disabled person. And you're like, what is that meant to mean?
100%. I think they meant like you're supposed to just sit at home and not actually look nice or make any effort whatsoever. So when they actually see you made an effort, put your makeup on, I mean, you with your makeup on, me with my makeup on, they're like, whoa, she actually looks quite nice for a disabled person. And it's quite a shock sometimes, isn't it, weirdly?
It's funny because I think everyone either has this idea that we all get dressed in the dark or the fact that someone picks out our clothing and the person that picks out our clothing has no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, and we're just incapable of making any decisions or anything and we just, look like a mess.
Yeah, I'm going to dive into something that actually came up a few years ago, and it was something Gina actually flagged to me, that we were in an article together talking about disability in dating and how it sort of changed over time. How do you think it's changed over recent years? Because that article was about 3 or 4 years ago now. Do you think dating, particularly like you're quite publicly talking about being a mum, and we're going to get into that later. So how do you think the dynamics changed?
I mean, I totally thought we even did that interview.
Yeah, I did as well.
That was even out there. I was like, oh yeah, wow. I don't know, really. I think because I know a lot of people who are disabled on social media that maybe are single. They talk about obviously their relationships and dating and things like that. That's a really positive side. But in general, I don't think you ever really hear about it that often still in media and stuff. I don't ever really, like, if you see like dating app sort of adverts and things, I can't remember ever seeing a disabled person trying to date or anything like that. I mean, I know they did that show, didn't they? That, whatever it was called, that dating, like disability dating show. Yeah,
there's the disability dating. Then there's like the common debate of the undateables. There's a very much for and against argument for that.
I know. It's like one or the other, isn't it? You're either like undateable or you can only date other disabled people, or do you know what I mean? It's they don't understand that you can just date anybody. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're in a wheelchair or disabled or what. But yeah, I feel like there's a bit of a way to go still, really.
Definitely, and I think even like obviously me and Gina are also public about our relationship. Definitely, there's still that assumption that there are carers, and while yes, they might provide some of our care and support, that's not their like. It sounds bad. I can't think of a better way to phrase it. It's not their primary task. Like
100%. I mean, literally, when I have to deal with the council to do like getting my carers and getting money from the council for my carers, and when my husband is at home from work, I don't get care, because he is presumed to be my carer, even though I've told them so many times, I don't want him to be my carer. That's not our relationship. That shouldn't be have to be our relationship. They will not pay anybody else while he is available. And I just think it's just crazy. I had to fight for them to do it overnight, because they were like, well, he's there. And I'm like, yeah, but what if he goes on holiday? What if he goes out with his mates? Like, he shouldn't have to be here around the clock just because he's my husband. It's crazy.
I mean, I've asked quite a few people, because I've not ventured into care that isn't family members, friends, Gina. How does it work? Because I always think it just always sounds complex. Like even the friend that I spoke to, I mean, you flagged it there. There's so much red tape and sort of do say this, don't mention this, do say that. How has your journey been in terms of arranging your care and support?
I think it is literally, I mean, I always do worst case scenario, because if I'm in the middle of the night, I'm going to like either being sick or there's a fire. I can't get out of my bed without somebody. So somebody has to be here on call at all times. And I think that's the way I go about it. But they will try and kind of give you the most minimum care that they can, because they don't want to pay the money out. They don't want to have to give that money to you. So yeah, you just have to you have to fight for it. And I think that is like a lot of things when you say, well, you have to fight for everything. I'm just lucky that they finally listened and hopefully still do.
I think the craziest thing that people don't realise if you're not in the disability world is also it changes location to location. Like I've spoken to friends that are in different, like I think Northamptonshire area.
Yeah.
I've spoken to friends up in Cornwall. Everything changes depending on who your local authority is, and it gets quite like, I think that's why, I mean, me and Gina are quite fortunate at the moment. We still live with my parents, but that's also why I'm quite wary of when we do move out. You got to be so aware of the council that you're moving into if you are changing councils, and that's something people don't seem to. It's hard because I didn't even realise it until I sort of started hearing these stories of people not getting the right support because they don't get offered as much support from one council. I was like, I didn't even think about the fact of considering, does this council have a good social care policy? Is like
it's literally postcode lottery. Like I've had friends that I've kind of grown up with that live in different areas, and they will get like 3 times the amount of money to pay their carers.
Yeah.
So it's so much easier for them to get carers because they're paying a great wage. Whereas on my carers, like a few years ago, were literally on less than minimum wage. You're not going to be able to get carers that want to do the job for that because they're not getting paid enough for it.
It's so hard as well because then also, because you're relying on the council, you're at their mercy essentially. Yeah. And it's like, I'd imagine there's the debate of you go, could I do this privately, but then I shouldn't have to, and I shouldn't even be thinking this, but then you're like between a rock and a hard place because you're not getting the answers from the councils, and it's, I'm, as I say,
easy.
No, but then it's something like we've talked about as me and Gina, and I'm quite lucky that I don't tend to need too much support, but like you say, it's that whole thing of when we move out, the assumption will be Gina will be my primary support. But then, like you say, like what happens if Gina needs to go to an event? Gina wants to go out with her mates. She wants to go on holiday. Like, what is the game plan then? Because then there's the debate of, which is what I've already thought, is like, okay, so I need to make sure when I move out, I need to be near a family network so that when Gina goes away, I can,
You feel like you want to be independent, but then you're never really independent because you're always relying on somebody else.
And it's hard as well because I do sympathise with the local authorities. I know they're under so much pressure, but then I'm also like, as I always say, there's a human being at the end of this.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, definitely. I think and you get social workers that are so kind and caring, and they're literally just limited by the funds and things, and they can see that you need it, and their hands are tied, and it's horrible, really, isn't it?
What advice would you give to someone? Well, this is actually perfect for me as well. What advice do you give to someone that's looking into possibly arranging care because they might be in a similar situation to myself, or family members have always done it, so they're like, oh God, this is a whole new world. What is sort of the first steps, or what was the first thing that you did? I mean, I don't know how long ago you started with care and support, so you might be like, oh, I've had it for X amount of years, and I'm like, oh, okay.
No, I mean, a lot of my friends and family do my care, so kind of the same as you. So I've never actually had to sort of interview any carers or anything like that, because I've kind of found people through my life that kind of have said, oh, I'll help you out, like for a couple of years or whatever. I mean, one of my friends I met at uni, so we're going back like 15 years now, and she's been my carer ever since. She's still doing it now, even though she does a full-time job.
Love that.
Because she just knows it's so helpful to me to have her to do it even one night a week. So yeah, I'm lucky in that way, but I know of other people that really have to like interview and people don't turn up, and that's scary for me. Like the thought of reaching out and that vulnerability of putting yourself out there is really scary.
I think as well, it's that other thing, like whenever you think of care support, is finding carers that you connect with. If they're not family members and they're not friends, it's like if you've got no common ground or no like connection to them, that must be extremely awkward, because you've got this person helping you with, say, personal care, and then they're just sort of going through the motions, and I'd imagine that feels incredibly awkward.
And it's like them being like, I mean, I only just since I had my daughter started having them all day, and you just think you're sharing your whole life with them, like they're there all day every day. Like you've got to find someone that you get on with, otherwise it would be awful.
Yeah, I can imagine. Could you imagine like having a really like doesn't say anything, doesn't really like deadpan, like
just sits in the corner quietly waiting. Like, oh no, that'll be weird.
It was so strange. Can you talk to us a bit about your disability and how it impacts you? Obviously, we've spoken a lot about obviously the care and stuff, but to give the extra context, can you tell us a bit about your disability?
Yeah, so it's spinal muscular atrophy, and I have type 3 because it kind of varies from mine's the more sort of mild type, they would say. But it varies massively. I can't walk at all. I can't stand. To transfer, I need to use a hoist. I can still drive a car. I drive that from my wheelchair, so I've had all that adapted and everything. So yeah, it's the physical side of things that's the hardest. I get very tired quickly, and I can't move my muscles and things as much as I'd like to. But yeah, that's it really.
Because one thing I wanted to come on to, I mean, we'll just jump into it now, is obviously you travel a lot. And I always, until I started connecting with people like yourself that can't weight bear, I always kind of like, you just go, this is the way I do it. So this is the way that everyone, and it sounds really naive, because I'm sitting there like, particularly the work that I do now, you have to be so aware of everyone else's disabilities and how every disability varies. But travel wise, I mean, you've done a lot of content around how you travel. What are some considerations that you have to make when it comes to traveling?
I think, I mean, we've always loved cruising, like especially in more recent years, because it's just, like, especially if we go from Southampton, you don't have to fly, you don't have to do anything, stay in your wheelchair. It feels so much more safe.
Yep.
But like in the past when I have flown, I actually went away this year and flew, and it's just, you're giving away like my legs essentially. Like it's so scary. And we like prepare my wheelchair, we like bubble wrap it and get it all flight safe. But it's that vulnerability of giving it away and just not having that, and then I have to be lifted on then, and you're just reliant on other people, you're reliant on the teams to lift you in a safe way and things like that. And it's just, that's the scary part, because you have no control, you lose all control, and that's what freaks me out the most. But then I just love it so much that I will do it, because I can't bear not to travel. So
no, I hear you. I mean, as I say, that's why I always think in this situation, like whenever I chat to people like yourself that do have to have that more physical support, I'm so grateful that I, like, as you say, it's that whole thing of I don't really rely on them, but because I don't trust them. That's the
Yeah.
worst thing, is like you don't trust them. So you go, because of the way my disability works, I can kind of get away with like avoiding them like the plague. And
Yeah.
that's the worst thing.
Yeah.
But that's the worst thing. It shouldn't be that way. Like,
I
so
know.
I almost want, you say about the wheelchair argument, I almost want like to be able to send like whoever I'm traveling with to watch them get the item off, so that if they're doing it wrong, you can go, don't do that, do this. Because especially with
Yeah.
electric chairs, it seems to always be electric chairs. They don't know what they're doing.
No,
Like,
I mean, the thing is that they're so heavy. They don't have any of the right equipment. Like we went to Birmingham Airport and they got it off on like the luggage carrier, and then they couldn't get it down from the luggage carrier. They had no equipment to be able to lift it down off there. They were like, we're going to need 5 men to go and lift it because it's so heavy. And you're like, in 2024, how is it possible that you don't just have a lift or something? You can just wheel a wheelchair up. Like it just
yeah,
baffles me that it's
yeah.
still so complex, and you're like, it really doesn't need to be. There's so many more simple ways to do it.
On the note to like flights, what's your opinion of this whole thing that's flying around of like being able to fly in your chair? Because I'm kind of on the fence, because I sit there and go, surely there's some safety issues there. Like,
I know. Yeah, I mean, personally it would be incredible because
yeah,
obviously I haven't got to get out of my chair, haven't got all that fiasco of going through all of that. I just don't know how it's going to work. There's like
no,
every wheelchair is so different. Like I just can't understand how they can tie down
no,
every type of wheelchair and
yeah.
make it safe. Like I just don't understand how they'll do it. It would be incredible, but yeah,
I'm
I
also
can't see it.
intrigued by the cost, because like when I use my normal normal person business brain, I go, hang on a second, I know the debate that's coming here. They're like, hang on, we need to take up 3 spaces to be able to
Yeah.
fit one wheelchair. How does that work? So I'm wondering, are we then going to be given like, oh,
Gosh.
here's
Yeah.
your 3 times the price because we need the space.
Yeah, and that's what they're all about, isn't it? It's all about the money and how many
Yeah.
people they can fit on a plane. So yeah, I can't imagine it's going to be that beneficial, but you don't know. Who
Yeah,
knows?
as I say, I just sit there and think with the safety thing, I'm like, particularly with the weight of the chairs, God forbid you're in an accident. I'm like, that's a heavy piece of machinery to go hurtling forwards on top of a person.
I
And
know.
that's, yeah, that thought that does scare me a little bit.
You have to be selfish, but no, I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Just positive thinking. More. Isn't it more people are killed by sharks than planes? Isn't it some
Yeah, I
weird
feel
stat like that?
it'll be fine.
We're talking. You mentioned like cruises though. One thing, like I'm always petrified of cruises, mostly because I'm like I get cabin fever quite a lot, so I get very
Right.
much like being stuck in one place. I like,
Yeah.
don't like that. Plus as well, I love exploring. So I sit there and go, the idea of getting, oh, okay, Charlie, we're going to get into this port and you have 48 or 24 hours to explore. Then you need to be back of the ship. Yeah, the idea of that
I know.
scare, like, I don't like it. So what's been your experience of cruises?
I mean, I love it just because, like I say, it's easy to get on.
Yeah,
They're very
yeah,
accessible. I'm different to you, whereas I quite like just like little taster of places.
yeah.
I mean, most places you get probably like 5 or 6 hours. That's all you get at a place. And I
Oh,
always
yeah,
say like, oh, at least I know if I like it, I could come back there, but
yeah,
I probably won't go back there because then I'd have to fly there. But yeah, no, I just like it. It doesn't feel so sort of rushed, and you can get off when you want to. Although we did have a sailing with P&O this year, and that wasn't the best. Like the service with the getting on and off the ships and stuff was a bit stressful, and you did almost feel a bit of an inconvenience
yeah,
because they have to, obviously at some ports you can't get through the ports, you have to have their transport for it, and then they have no accessible transport. It's probably like 1 or 2 vans to like 40 wheelchairs coming off a ship, and you're all queuing there for hours. So there's pluses and minuses. Like
yeah,
there's,
yeah, yeah.
as with everything, there's good and bad things, but it's nice to get to see. I've seen a lot more places on a cruise than I think I would have otherwise. So I
Yeah.
think that's the plus. That's for positive for me.
One stereotype that I think I had for a long time, but then obviously a lot of creators started speaking about going on to cruises, is the whole, it's only for old people.
Yeah.
What's been your experience of that?
The last cruise that we did, there was like hundreds of teenagers. I cannot even tell you how many young people there. I was like, what is happening? Because I'm kind of old and I quite like the old people being on there. But I feel like with Virgin Cruise, there's other cruises coming about now, isn't there, where they're very like cool and adults only, and they've got like the nightclubs and everything on there. I'm a bit of an old person, so that don't bother me so much.
To be fair, I'm the same. I sit there and go, just give me a nice coffee in a good spot, and I'm set. That's me.
Read me book. That'd be lovely.
Or have you found like the accessibility of the rooms and stuff? Because they're working with a lot more restricted space. I suppose that hotels are still working with restricted space, but in terms of like they've got to. Because I also imagine the rooms to be quite. I know now it's not because of the content people created, but the room feel quite claustrophobic.
Yeah, I mean, they're really good. We've only have had really good experiences with the rooms. They've obviously been big enough for us.
Yeah.
And the bathrooms are normally really good. It's surprising actually because they obviously the non-disabled cabins, I can't even fit through the doors. They don't even make them accessible in any way whatsoever. So like if I go with my parents, I can't get in their cabin at all. So that does my head in. But then you're like, well, at least our cabin is like huge space. So normally they are pretty good. And they always have like space under the bed. So if you've got manual voice like I do, that you don't have to worry about it, which is really nice.
That's a bit like, yeah, it's one of those things like because your room's often bigger, your room becomes this like meeting point.
Yeah.
Do you find that? Whenever you go away with friends and family.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, but you've got the bigger room. And you're like, right, okay.
Yeah, you hang out here all the time. That's fine. Yeah, great.
Don't mind me. Just getting out of the shower.
You're just chilling on the balcony. That's fine.
Yeah. Although I do have to ask, because Gina is constantly at me talking of travel about Paris and traveling and Disneyland Paris.
Yeah,
I went years ago. I mean, I have to hold my hands up. It was years ago. It was part of a school trip, and I didn't have the best of experience because essentially they were like, "You can't do that, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that," and she's been on at me to go back to Paris because it's closer, it's cheaper. We need to go. It feeds her Disney head. But then I sit there and go, I don't want to pay all this money and then just sit in the bar.
I know what you mean. I think you do kind of have to manage expectations because I think at Disneyland Paris there's about 5 rides that are fully wheelchair accessible where you can stay in your wheelchair. Obviously, if you can transfer, you've got a lot more options. But I think if you love Disney, it doesn't matter because there's the shows, there's the parades, there's so many things, and I just love all of it. So I feel like if you're a fan, you'll love it, but you should do it for Gina.
I'm a Disney fan. I was spoiled as a kid. I got taken to Florida and I've never been. I mean, I know the situation's changed and I'm talking like I was 6. So you're talking 19 years ago. But I've never been so well looked after in terms of Disney. They were like, yeah, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, no problem. And whereas every other theme park I've ever been to, it's always been, can you walk down a flight of stairs? And you're like, very obviously, no.
That's a no. Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, you can't go on it. And you're like, but what ones can I go on? And they're like, one ride. And you're like, so I've just spent all this money and I can go on one ride. Right. Okay.
Yeah. I do feel like, though, I mean, like I went to Florida last year and I've been to Paris this year with massive Disney fanatics in our house. And actually the cast members have always, at both places have been amazing. Like they've kind of, I mean, we went on It's a Small World twice. They let us go round again. We could stay on.
I did the same. Yeah.
My family was like, yes, this is the best thing ever. So I think they kind of, if they can make it a bit nicer and like they'll go out the way to kind of like get a better situation for you. But I know what you mean. It does suck that you can't go on some of the rides, and they make newer rides and then don't make them accessible. And I'm
it's so weird. And then, like, I mean, you said about the good experience of Disney. One of the funny things was it was where one of my family nicknames come from, which is Charlie Fastpass. Because I mean, I think it's changed now, but back in the day at Disney, if you rocked up and you're a wheelchair user, you went straight to the front. But also, I was with 10 people, so we all, they all went forward as well.
They still do that in Paris. Paris is so much better than Florida in that respect, because there's literally a separate queue. There's always a separate entrance that you go to. And then as soon as you're at the front, you're on. So that is good.
It's mad that, like, having so much money as the Disney franchise does. It's mad that they're not. I know they do their best. I'm not saying that there's definitely worse places out there, but it's mad that they've not thought about it more. Particularly, like, I feel like America, because they've got like is it ASA? Is it that
DAS?
DAS. That is so pushed in America. I'm surprised they're not further forward than they are. I mean, it'd be interesting now to go back, because I wonder if anything's changed in Paris because of the influx of the Paralympics, and seeing if anything changed there.
I think one of the main things to me is toileting, because I just literally put a video on my Instagram earlier this week that we found a toilet with a hoist in Disneyland Paris. And it's the only one, I think, in the whole of Disney. Like, in America, they don't have it. And you just think, how is that possible? Like, mobile hoists are probably, for them, pennies for them to buy. Like, just to have one and all the disabled accessible toilets in America were huge. So if they just had one, like, per park, it just doesn't make sense. Like, it's just crazy to me that they wouldn't even think, like, if they can do it in Paris, why can't they do it everywhere else?
It's so weird as well. And I don't know about yourself, but I sometimes go into disabled toilets in Europe and sit there and go, I'm okay, but anyone that's an electric wheelchair user, how are you going to even turn in this room?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you need a hoist or need support transferring, it must be an absolute nightmare. Yeah. But I mean, I've always had a funny experience in France in general. I mean, we were there a couple of weeks ago, and I was sat outside the disabled toilet. Naturally, you have to pay. I have no problem with that, because the toilets are better quality. I have no problem whatsoever. I'm sat there and made direct eye contact with the guy that's taking the tickets, waiting for him to come over and open the disabled toilet, because there wasn't a usual key or a Euro key or anything like that. So I was waiting there for about 5 or 6 minutes, and I'm like making eye contact with this guy, like, can you let me into the toilet, please? Yeah. And then the bloody son and father and son come over, like, pushchair, baby chair, the lot. He came straight over, opens the door, and I'm sat there like, what just happened?
Oh no, it's crazy, isn't it?
It's only in France, though. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether they don't like gingers or what it is. But whenever I'm in France, I don't know.
It's just you.
To be honest, I don't blame them. Yeah, I can understand that, to be honest.
No, I do feel like you say with the Paralympics, I hope it's better, because even when I've been to actually in Paris itself, we had a really bad experience, and like literally, like you say, like you kind of ignored, you kind of you're annoying, like getting in the way, and I did feel like that actually years ago. And
one of the things that I found super interesting was talking to a friend who was out there so he was out there at the end of the Paralympics, and then was there just after, and he said it was like a Cinderella effect. So everything was all great, everything was great, and while the Paralympics was on, and then boom, as soon as it ended, it was a different story. And I really hope it was a one-off and it isn't a thing, because if it is, it leans into that tokenism thing, which is. I was
going to say, it's literally like, well, we'll do it. Look how amazing we are, and then it's over. Okay, bye.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, London's not great, but I feel like we managed to keep some of it. Yeah, we managed to keep some of the magic.
Yeah. Definitely. It does, and that's the worst fear, isn't it? That they're literally just going to have done it to look good, and then Actually, we're not that bothered.
It's so, because even like we went in between. So we went to Paris for the day in between the Olympics and the Paralympics. And even I've never seen such a flawless mission as that experience of Eurostar I had. But I then sit there and go, I've heard so many horror stories about this. Is this just a one-off?
One-off, yeah. Although I did, when we went on the Eurostar actually to Paris a few years ago, it was really good. So
yeah. I mean, I like you. I kind of like the fact of like not having to deal with like packing away your wheelchair or doing it.
Yeah.
Because one of my ones is I never understand it. Actually, it's a good one to ask you. Whenever I travel, I have my front wheel attachment for my manual chair. I get so interrogated for having a battery. And I'm like,
yeah,
what do you guys do with electric? Because you guys have got huge batteries.
Yeah, I know. We literally, when we came back from Florida last year, we had, like, you have to immobilize your wheelchair. And they asked me so many times to make sure it was immobilized. And they were like, you cannot get on this flight unless that battery is immobilized. And we were like, okay, like, but it was so serious.
Oh, dear,
and we were like, oh my God. Because they obviously only can take certain type of batteries or
it's certain
in certain
yeah,
places.
Yeah. I found out why they're so funny with batteries, which is really interesting, was it's basically when a plane goes up, because of the temperature change, moisture builds up and they're worried about the moisture going onto the battery and then causing a fire.
Oh, okay.
Well, super interesting. Hats off to the guy at Gatwick that explained it to me, and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense.
I mean, we don't even know, and we're the ones that it affects. We're like, oh, right, okay. Didn't know that.
It's so weird because as well, like I had an experience this is quite a funny one. I had an experience in Germany where I was going through security and they're doing the usual pat you down, do this, do that, and the guy's feeling underneath my chair, and I've got like a bag underneath my chair that has like a mini toolkit, nothing major, it's just some Allen keys and anything else. So guy feels out of the bag, goes, what's that? And then he realizes it's a toolkit and he goes off to speak to the security guards, and German security guards aren't English security guards. They've got full like guns, the lot. So they're there. So they goes over, says like, oh, like got this toolkit. And they come walking towards me and I'm like, here we go. So they've gone, why have you got a toolkit? And I'm like, well, it's for my chair. They're like, oh, we don't normally, like, you're not allowed to toolkit. To be fair to the guys, they spoke very good English. I said, you're not allowed here in Germany. And I was like, oh, right, okay. I didn't know, because I've travelled at lots of different places. It's never been a problem. Yeah. And then he goes off and chats to his mate, kind of debating whether to let me through or not with the mini toolkit. And then comes up to me and goes, so you said it's for fixing your wheelchair. How often do you have to fix your wheelchair? And I'm like, well, in my head, I'm going, ideally never.
Yeah.
But also in my head, I'm also going, I need to give him a reasonable enough answer that he lets me through with it, but doesn't think I'm taking the mick. So I went, every 10 weeks. I don't, like.
So specific. Every 10 weeks, something's going to happen.
I was just like, what do you do? I mean, as I say, another time in Germany, I got manhandled going through security. The guys wanted to check check my cushion, and I explained and said like, oh, is it okay if Gina helps me up, and then you can check your cushion, no problem. And this German guy literally, without even like entertaining the idea, just picked me up and put me back down, and I was like, no, what just happened?
That's what I mean. Like you literally, and then it happens, and you think, oh, how did I let that happen?
Yeah.
But then you have no warning of it.
No, the worst thing was he picked me up, took my cushion, and just sat me back down on the bare chair. And obviously, in my situation, that's not going to have a massive impact. But I was like, I don't really know what to do. And then he just came back up and picked me back up and put me back down. And I was like, okay. Yeah.
What?
But the craziest thing is then I had the exact same scenario happen when I was in Prague. And they did exactly what they should have done. No, Copenhagen. They did exactly what they should have done. I said, oh, do you mind if Gina helps me up? And then you take of course, they even brought over a separate chair for me to sit in if I wanted. I was like, what? Like, I'm not trying to smuggle anything in. I'm just trying to do everything as safely as I can.
I know. And it's so different, isn't it? Everywhere you go, this is the problem. You never know what to expect.
No,
You have to be prepared for everything.
I never have problems on the UK side. I don't know whether
No.
it's because of the language barrier. Whenever I'm traveling home, it's always chaos because I know about yourself with the electric chair, but you bring up the battery and they're like, "Oh my God, what do I do?" And you're like, I mean, I did phone up and tell you guys that I was traveling with a battery.
Yeah.
Like, I even sent pictures of it. I did everything I needed to do.
I know.
And you're like, what is this? Then you're like, a battery?
May we move?
Yeah. And you sat there like, do you think I just wander around with this for fun?
I mean, we've had instances where they're like, oh, they'll be able to just put it through on the luggage racks, like your wheelchair.
Oh,
and we're like,
don't. Yeah, I had
20, it's a £200 wheelchair.
Yeah.
You're not just picking it up and putting it on the luggage racks, like, for God's sake. And they're like, oh, is it not? Can it not fold up? And I'm like,
no.
What? Why are they not having training in this place?
Oh, don't. In Lisbon, that happened to me and I obviously I'm in a situation where it's a manual chair. So it's a lot lighter. But basically, they went. I'm going to the assistant. Said, "Oh, where do they put the wheelchairs once they come through?" And she's like, "Oh, it comes through and points to the conveyor belt." And I'm like,
"No,
what?" And also, I'm watching this conveyor belt, and everything's just banging into each other, and I'm like, "What? You can't be serious." Literally, we saw it come through, and I've never seen Gina dive so quickly to get this wheelchair.
Oh, bless her.
It's honestly traveling as a wheelchair. I mean, I know there's a lot going on with the rights for flights thing and everything going on there, but it's so complicated.
It's just never going to be simple. No matter what happens, there will always be things that go wrong. So,
and I think as well, automatically, there's the problem of the language barrier as well. If you don't speak the language, it's automatically going to become more challenging. They just need to up their ante with Google Translate so we can all just sit there and go, "This is what I mean."
It's supposed to be simple.
But then again, actually, that brings up one of my pet peeves of English people. We just assume that everyone speaks English.
Yeah, that is true.
It's one of
I'm rubbish at languages as well. I hated it at school.
It's when I see, and I speak some Spanish, some French, but none of it fluently. But it's when I see English people speak to someone who doesn't speak English, they say the same thing, just louder.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're not deaf.
If I shout, they'll get it, yeah.
Oh, it's so weird.
That's such an English thing to do, isn't it?
How's it been travelling as a mum?
More hectic. There's more things you've got to remember to take. But actually not too bad. I mean, I feel like I've been so lucky. I mean, Zyra's had so many amazing experiences already in her life. She's only 4 and she's been Disney, on a fly in Turkey and all these different things. And I feel like I'm really blessed to be able to do this with her and experience those things, because I don't want to let my disability stop me from doing it, and I shouldn't let my disability stop me from doing it. So no matter how stressful it is, I'm doing it anyway.
I love that. Is there anything that you have to think of? Like, obviously I've never traveled with people with kids, but not my own kid. So is there anything you have to kind of think of? Because I'm thinking of all the stuff you have to do disability wise, and then taking a kid through that process. I can just see them getting bored as hell, being like, why have we got to do this every time we go away?
Yeah, I mean, I take my parents. You got to have the grandparents. That is the key, so that they're there all the time to help, so that I can be panicking and then she's fine. She's looked after and safe, and then we're just trying to sort all the shit out that's going on behind the scenes. Yeah, basically. I
love that though, because it's exactly the setup I had when I was younger traveling. My nan and granddad would always come, and it was cheap daycare.
Yeah. I'm like, we'd love to have holidays with you. Please come on holiday with us. Yeah.
What I find weird is my family as well. Nan and granddad used to, so there's 4 of us. So there's me, my sister, my 2 cousins. Nan and granddad used to go away with us 4 on their own. And I'm like, that is chaos. I don't know how you do it.
I can't see my mum and dad doing that anytime soon, that's for sure. They see him enough as it is. They'll be like, no, we need a break.
How has your daughter found I suppose, because this opens a conversation of everyone going, oh, it must be so difficult being a parent as someone with a disability. But then also, if you're a parent of a parent and have a disability, your child knows no difference, so they just crack on. Well, how does your daughter like react to all this disability stuff of people staring, making strange comments, and all of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, she knows no difference. So to her, I'm mum and that I'm in a wheelchair and that's it. She's probably only in the last year or so has kind of said, "Why are you in a wheelchair, mummy?" And I have to sort of explain my legs don't work like yours. And she'll just bring it up in conversation. Now she's like, "Oh, mummy, you can't jump on the trampoline, but I'm going to go and jump on the trampoline. So can you just sit and watch me?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's fine."
Yeah.
So she so gets it, but it doesn't bother her. She's just like, "Oh, well, you can't do it, so I'll just go and do it and you can watch." Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. But I love it. It's great.
I love that as well, because it's always, like I said, to the best people to ask about disability and get them to learn is kids, because they have no filter. They just go, "So hang on, why are you using that again?" And you're like, "Oh," and you're like, "Who are you?"
Everywhere I go out, and if there's little kids, they're like, "Oh, mummy, why is she in that chair?" And my car is like a spaceship to them because it all opens automatically, and they're like, "Oh," they can't get over it. It's so amazing, and I don't care. I'm like, I'll tell them, and the parents so apologetic, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I'm like, "It's fine."
If anything,
I'd much rather they know.
Yeah, if anything, I don't like it when they like bat them away. It's like, no.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm not a dirty secret. You can ask the question. It's fine.
Yeah, and then they're educated. Do you know what I mean? They're like, it's better for them to learn about it and it not be weird. Like you say, if the parents freak out, it's like, why are they freaking out?
Yeah,
it's totally fine.
But then I suppose that you're seeing that as well more with schools being, I mean, they're not perfect, but schools being more inclusive as well. There's more exposure for young people and growing up. Because now I sit there and think, I grew up in a mainstream school where there was quite a few, but then also it was one of them ones where like they had a lot of the stuff for disability. So there was like almost like the disability group. There was like 10 of us. Yeah, we were just all there like, yep, we're here.
We're the disabled ones.
Yeah, we're the disabled ones. We have, weirdly, at the time, we had our own, not even because of like trying to separate us, but we had our own table because most of us were in wheelchairs and we couldn't fit under the benches. So we used to have our own table.
Well, you had to sit on your own. Oh, yeah, that's not great, is it? That's not ideal.
Things have got better. Things have got a lot better. But
I used to have to go on a bus and I hated it. It was like, because I had to live further away because it wasn't like the accessible schools weren't close. And then I had to go on this bus like with all the others, and I used to hate it because I was like, oh, I'm just like segregated and everyone just sees me as a disabled person and all of this. And yeah, as a teenager, like you coming up to your teenage years, it was just the worst thing ever. And I was like, this is so embarrassing.
My mum always makes a joke because she's like, so when I was in primary school, my school was out of my local council. So they agree, well, Charlie can go to the school, but his parents have to drop him. So the whole time I was in primary, I was going to Mum, can I go on the bus? Why can't I go on the bus? Why can't I go on the bus? And then we got to secondary school and I was in my local council. So I got in a group taxi and then I would sit there going, wait, hang on a second. Why aren't you taking me anymore? I don't want to go with that lot.
Yeah, this isn't any better.
Yeah. I was like, I get a direct route.
I know, yeah, I used to have to leave the house at like 7:30 and be on a bus for like an hour and a half. Like, it was ridiculous. And
then you'd be, as well, you'd like, I don't know about you, but you'd also get in early. So you'd be sitting there going, now what do I do?
And I always had to wait afterwards. And I'll always remember that one of my friends had got a parent that worked there. So we just used to sit together. We used to play Boggle.
Yeah.
Like, what? Because we were just sad, lonely little children. I know, right?
In secondary school, I got forgotten.
Oh
no! Basically, a load of the others called in sick, and the guy just didn't come and get me. So I'm stood outside the school in January, like freezing, being like, "Mum, no one's here, and it's like 4:15. What's going on?"
No.
But
not great.
you live and learn. The good news is
Yeah.
I think you become quite a good communicator normally if you've got a disability, particularly a physical disability. You kind of, because you have to ask for support and stuff. So I was just friendly with all the teachers and like
Yeah.
the ladies at the desk, so I'd just go in and chat with them.
Yeah. I feel like you just learn to put up with a lot of shit when you're disabled. That's basically
Yeah,
you just
yeah, you learn
get
to,
on with it.
yeah,
You
you
have to.
just, you go, it is what it is. You just got to,
Yeah.
and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes I do wonder with the way that we're going, it's like everything's a problem. I don't know whether that's just me. I don't know what your views on that are in terms of like, it's like sometimes I feel like the disabled community pick fights and you sit there going, is that really the fight we're going to pick? Like,
Yeah. No, I feel that. And I always feel like a bit of a minority, like,
yep.
because I think, should I be more proactive on like saying something about everything? And then I'm like, oh, I can't fight everything. Like some things are just going to be that way and we're just going to deal with it. But I do like, yeah, I see a lot of people being very proactive and I just think, oh, I
I ain't got the
can't.
energy. I have not
No,
got the
I
energy.
literally can deal with my life and then I would do what I can, but that's it.
Switching back to a bit of a cheerier topic, I wanted to get you to speak on like your one of your passions, fashion, and I'm a poet and I didn't know it. I just wanted to sort of, what got you into fashion? I mean, obviously, a lot, as we said at the beginning, everyone goes, oh, like you dress quite well for a disabled person, or wow, you're into fashion and you're disabled. That's really cool. But what was actually your introduction into fashion? What made you go, I really enjoy this?
I mean, I just loved it from a young age. I've always loved clothes. Like even when I could still walk, I loved clothes. And then I just continued that on. And I think I've always loved bright colours ever since I was young. And yeah, I think it's just come out then through my clothing because everything I wear is rainbow and wild. But I think it's because I kind of like want to totally go the opposite way of the expectation almost people might have of the disabled person and go, actually, no, I'm the total opposite. I don't care if you look at me. I don't care if you. And half the time, all I get is compliments. So you think, well, actually, it's a good thing. It's good dressing up and wearing colourful clothes because it's like it's a positive thing, really.
I mean, we a bit of a weird change, but we were chatting about it at the weekend. Like, people seem to be quite reluctant to dress up, and I'm like, hang on, but surely dressing up is more fun, and you'll very rarely be told, "Oh, you've dressed up too much."
Yeah,
like it's one of those like
over the top.
Yeah, you have to go some to be over the top. Where sometimes you see people and you're like, we went horse racing the other day, and some people at the horse racing, you're like, guys, it's an occasion to dress up. Come on, do something a little bit different. Yeah. But like, what one of my things was shoes. So what's been your, like, do you have like a special, when it comes to like clothing, is there anything that you're like, I just have a weird obsession with shoe, or is it just everything?
I think like, I mean, I clothes wise and everything, I love everything. I have so many handbags, shoes, but shoes to me are like my biggest hate and biggest love because I love shoes, but I can never find them because my feet are so wide and so fat because I'm always sitting down that I really struggle to find them. So if I find something that works, like New Balance trainers, for example, I'm obsessed with at the minute, I then buy them in like 10 colours because I'm like, right, they're comfortable, they work, they look nice. Like I'm just going to buy them in every colour. And then I've got them for every outfit. And I do that with handbags. I do that with everything. Yeah, I can't.
I love that. That is very much me. I mean, particularly like one of the things I did that with was Billy footwear. I found Billy footwear and found that it worked for me, and then got overexcited. But the worst thing is, it's a US brand, and the import taxes that you have to pay. You're like, oh, this hurts. This hurts.
I know. And then I like New Balance trainers that are like £100. I'm like, why can't I just like a cheap pair of trainers?
I think shoes is one of those things that someone in the disability market's really got to tackle, because
I'd love to do it.
Because one of the big things for me was that a lot of the adaptive brands is very geared towards the elderly. And that becomes really tricky, because then you sit there thinking, for those of us that aren't doing that and aren't thinking from a functional perspective, or are thinking from a functional perspective, but also like, I want a cool pair of trainers.
Yeah.
it doesn't exist. And I
Yeah,
just,
that's what I thought, because like I want an accessible brand to just be really, I mean, cool is not a cool word, but like cool. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
it
It's
just,
so hard. Like I just want, I'm quite good at finding clothes that work for me, because I've
yeah.
bought so many things now. I can shop at kind of high streets and stuff and know what will work and what won't work. And I just think sometimes they do like worry so much about practical things that then they lose, yeah, like
Yeah.
trends, things like that. It's hard.
An adaptive brand that remembers that it's fashion
Yeah,
is probably the best way to put it.
yeah,
It's hard because I do understand like the practicality thing, and there are some limitations to what you can do to try and make things more accessible. So then that does complicate things. But then also, there's no reason you can't have a thought about it during like the design process. You go,
yeah,
right, we want to do this thing and this makes it more inclusive, but then how can we make it also look quite pretty? Because one of my things that I liked was with Billy was they looked more like trainers, like normal trainers, rather than I always think like ones that shoes that elderly would use,
mm,
and then that's what they need to lean more into. And obviously
yeah,
Billy has its challenges and its difficulties as well, but yeah, I just want to see someone, and I know that there are some amazing brands out there that are doing it. I just want to see more
yeah,
of it, and I want to see more of it as well. Of like, have someone likes a certain item, fashion item, I want you to be able to find that in the store that you want to buy it from, accessible to you. So, like for example, I don't want to go to a specific shop or online store for what I want. I just want to be able to pick up what I want in a way that works for me. But
yeah.
yeah, trying to make it happen. I mean, there's been. I was going to ask, like, is there anyone in the like accessibility clothing space or fashion space that you're like they're doing a really good job and they deserve a bit more recognition?
I mean, not really. I mean, this is trouble. I don't buy from them, so I don't really. I mean, I know I've seen like quite a few ads. I think it's Tommy Hilfiger that have done adaptive clothing,
Hmm.
and I think it's Tommy Hilfiger anyway. Um, and that was really cool. Like they had like
Yeah,
disabled models and stuff, and they looked like amazing. And the fashion was pretty cool. Like their fashion is kind of one that's going to transcend. Like so,
yeah.
it works like for a long period of time. It's not trend led, but it was nice clothes like that you'd want to go out and wear them. And I think that was really important. And yeah, I don't have many that
It's a hard one because I think as well the other thing you see a lot with adaptive brands, understandably so, because they also have to think about how something's designed, but the cost is often higher, which then
yeah,
can put people out of it because you go, I can't afford that, or I need 4 tops and not one, and I can't afford 4 tops in that style, so
yeah.
I have to go with this one. Like,
And I do think like that's why the high street almost needs to do a bit better. Like they're never going to be able to be fully inclusive. That's not going to be possible. But even leaning towards some ways that they could do it, just to speak to disabled people and see what would work and what wouldn't work, like a massive variety of people, and see if there's any way you could like get a middle ground almost. And
yeah,
then
it's like almost leaning into that like accidental accessibility. Like one of
yeah,
my things that I find that helps me is having like if you get a pair of boots, you get a pair of boots with a zip. That
yeah,
like changes the game for me. And like
yeah,
you can get
100%.
them. They're just few and far between. Whereas me trying to get into an actual Chelsea boot is like, God, you might as well. I talking of shoes. Do you remember me posting ever about my purple boots?
Yes, yeah.
My purple boots. So I did them, or me and Gina did them, I should say. Gina spent 35 minutes helping me put them on.
Oh, I know. That's hard work, isn't it?
I'm surprised she didn't kill me, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. She's very patient.
Yeah, she wasn't. To be fair, I could see it was the cracks were starting to appear. I give her that. Do you think that, like, do you think we can get to a point where fashion is more inclusive, though? Do you think there's enough? Because I think the worst thing is you need someone from the to use a horrible term, able-bodied community to buy
Mm,
into it for then it to become mainstream.
Yeah.
But it's like I often say, don't look at it as we're making it more accessible. Look at it. I always say everyone becomes a version of disabled as they get older. So look at it from that perspective. We're going, well, if I can't do this when I'm 90, how can I make it easier for me?
Yeah, I feel like it will get there. And there's so many people now talking about it, and so many platforms, like people on platforms that are disabled and love fashion. So I hope it will get there. But like you say, you've got to have someone that really is just so passionate about it and wants to make that difference. But
would you ever start your own one? Oh, I'm putting you on the spot now.
If I did anything, it would be shoes, because I'm just so passionate. Like finding summer sandals and stuff when you've got wide feet is a nightmare. So if I did anything, I think it would be shoes, because that's what I find the most difficult to find.
I am 100% with you. I am such a shoe diva. Like, I love a pair of shoes. My mum and sister always used to say, for a kid that can't walk, you've got so many fucking shoes.
So same. I've got so many shoes. I need them for me outfit.
Yeah, you need them. Exactly. It's like Gina's highlighted this term for me, sandwich dressing. That is very much me. Like, it's always starts with the shoes. Like, right, okay, I need to colour match my outfit with the shoes.
There you go. It's important.
It's weird though. I think it's the other thing as well is it comes from my side. It comes from that whole thing of everyone used to stare at my legs. So I was always like, oh, might as well stare at something nice.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. Make a feature of it.
Yeah, my feature shoes. And that's why I got purple boots.
Why not?
Although those boots, because I don't know if you've seen the depth of the boot, when they were on my foot plate, because they wedge my feet back, it like after a while, God, my knees are like done in for the day.
Yeah. I'm past that point now. I'm like, if it's not comfortable, I can't be bothered. I
hear that.
Wearing my trainers and being comfortable.
One of the biggest problems with me and shoes is when I drink, if I drink alcohol, my feet swell.
Oh, really?
I don't know what it is. Don't know why. I've always joked and said I could never get away with like secretly having a drink, particularly with Gina, because she'd go, "Hang on a second, Charlie, your feet are like balloons. What's going on here?"
Oh, that's great.
It's weird. It's so weird. But then, as I say, I can feel it. Particularly if I've got a tight pair of shoes, I can feel it. I'm like, oh, I didn't pick the best shoes. Should have gone for one of my other 100 of the collection.
Yeah. That's it. Just got to find another pair.
But we will get there one day. But just before I let you go, I wanted to ask you the question that I ask every guest at the end of every episode, which is, what's one piece of politically correctness that you really strongly agree with or disagree with?
I mean, the first thing that came to my head when you said it, and we've kind of touched upon this already, is that sometimes I feel like disabled people can be, I don't know, not pushy is the right word, but very like have to make a point about being disabled.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, let's just let it go. And like, even with things like, I've lost my train of thought. But like, yeah, even with when they're trying to say about something and it's so bad and it's so negative, and I just think it's never going to be perfect. And I think I've kind of through the years accepted that. And I suppose maybe that's just me not being a great disabled person, but I just sometimes think I can't be bothered. And it's also that thing of where people say, you can't ask me my disability, or you can't ask me what's wrong with me. And I just think, why? Like, if anyone asks me, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. And I suppose maybe that's because of how it's happened, or your personal situation. Obviously, it's so different for everybody. But I just don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me. But a lot of people make a big, huge deal about talking about their disability. And I just like, if you ask me, it's fine. Go for it.
I mean, I to be fair, I'm very much the same. Right? Weirdly, I still get a kick out of it, and I'm like, dude, you've been doing this for like 25 years. Why is this still exciting? But it's so true. I think the difficulty you got, as you say, it's that whole thing. If you've acquired a disability and that comes with its own trauma, then it's 100%. I get it. But then also, I've said on here before, I think we need to develop a referral culture. So if you're not comfortable talking about your disability, that's 100%. That's your call. go for it. But particularly if you work in the creator space or in the creator space, you can very quickly go, I can't, but Charlie certainly will.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true.
And it's
especially if it's a similar disability or something like
Yeah.
so you
So-
could kind of they're happy to kind of
yes.
thing.
So if you take the example of like autism, if you're not comfortable talking about your autism, there's tons of creators out there that will shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
And that way people learn. Because my biggest fear has always been, if you're quite abrupt with someone who wants to learn about disability, whether it's just a curious guy in the pub or whether it's you're doing a round table or whatever it might be, if you're quite abrupt with them, unfortunately, because of the way people's brains work, that's the way that they see every disabled person, and we're not all like that. And
they're shutting you down kind of thing.
And while there is, I give people the benefit of the doubt of like, you might have just been having a bad day. We all have days where you're like, I really don't want to do the whole disability dance every day.
Yeah, 100%.
And I get that, but then also it's just having that in the back of your mind. And then I think because it's so tricky because there's no perfect answer with it. But I completely with you I get talking about disability. That's how we change it, and that's what I always struggle with. And one of the, coming on to your other point of people making a big deal out of certain things, I think it's that whole thing for me. There's a phrase that I always say of like controlling your own outcome. So if you know, we all know trains are shite when it comes to disability. So I know there is a good possibility that something's going to go slightly pear-shaped, but I'm aware of it, and I know it's going to. I know it could happen, and I don't know. I'm kind of prepared.
I kind of expect it.
Yeah.
Like, in a way, I expect everything to go wrong, and then when it doesn't go wrong, great. It's a great day.
Yeah. No, I'm exactly the same. So they're not. When I see people doing certain things, and like obviously, if you got to do it, you got to do it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But when I see people doing the same, it's like Einstein's law of insanity of doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It doesn't work. So then I sit there and go, 100% we should need to improve it, but then also control as much as you can. And also, I find it really hard when people are constantly posting about the same issue. Because then I sit there and go, how many times do you find yourself in these scenarios?
I know. Like, how does it all? Why is it always so negative?
Yeah, because I always talking about the flights thing. I always feel like a terrible disabled person because I have had iffy experiences flying, but I've never had a terrible one.
Yeah.
So then I try and post like, oh, I had a really good experience with EasyJet today, or this, or the other, and it will go absolutely nowhere, and you're like,
I know, and you want the positivity, and then that's what people feed upon because they're like, oh, it's so negative, and then everyone feeds on it. You're like, it's good to celebrate the good stuff as well. Like, let's give props to the ones that are doing it good because it's like. Praise them, and then it will be better.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I'm quite happy as well. I posted about Gatwick's, my positive experience at Gatwick, and I know some people have had bad experiences, but the access, I can't remember her title, but like the access coordinator for Gatwick messaged me and was like, thank you so much for posting this. It's gone round our team. It's been like, it was in a team meeting. I was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, because it also could make someone's day of like, see, we are doing good stuff. We're not terrible.
100%. Yeah, I know. And that's it. It is like, you've got to give credit where credit's due sometimes and not just focus on the negatives. Otherwise, they're not going to want to change anything, are they? No. Because they'll think we don't appreciate it or don't care. But
and I think as well, it's important to treat it as a human interaction because I feel like as well, I always say to people, you only know what you know. So there's no point in me shouting and screaming at Harold, who's never met a disabled person in his life, but is a part of an access team, because he's like, oh, I didn't know that. So now I know that and I can go forward with it. So it's making it a human interaction of like allowing people to make mistakes. Because I've said that. I said, I don't particularly like when the debate of terminology comes up. If it's like outright offensive, 100%. But then if you can also see that that's just the terminology that they know, then you can kind of go, okay, there wasn't any malice in it. Your brain just malfunctioned for 5 minutes.
But even then, like, if you have the chance then to correct them or something, say, actually, that's not the best word. Like, you could say this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm quite happy to do that. It doesn't bother me to have to correct someone. I would it's just, like you say, people say different things. They're different generations, and they're brought up totally different to what we probably are brought up.
Yeah.
And you kind of sometimes have to just let it go.
There you go. And also, there's the way you correct them as well. Like, that's wrong. Well,
Yeah.
automatically, someone's back's going to be like, oh, okay, I'm not going to talk to you anymore because I get just told off. Whereas you go, look, I know it had really good intentions, but I just wanted to say that that's probably not the right word to use, and I want to stop you from getting in any further trouble with anyone else. I would say maybe use this one, or it's such a. I think the terminology debate is also another can of worms, because
100%. Yeah, you could talk about that for hours.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. Literally, there's probably about 5 or 6 clips of me saying the same thing. The debate of calling a disabled toilet. I'm like, I don't care as long as they've got one.
If I can access it, great. Don't care. Yeah.
Call it Charlie's toilet. I don't mind. It's all good. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been amazing to chat to you and actually like properly chat, because as I say, whenever we see each other, it's like, hi, bye,
meeting in the lift or whatever else. No, it's been really good to chat to you.
But of course, I will link all of Sophie's details below if you want to reach out to her, check out her content. I will link everything below. But thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Not Quite Podcast. Please make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram to get regular updates about the podcast.